Now, back to Eye on Your Money with Gary Rathbun.
We are back, and we have a special guest with us tonight, Matt Aston, president of Ground Penetrating Radar Systems, Inc., and he has offices all over Ohio. I assume the main corporate office is in Toledo or
it is
Columbus or somewhere.
It's in Toledo.
Toledo, but we have a mutual friend, and she told me your story, and I said, you know, what a great story. I want to get that on air. And now, first of all, what's your company do?
We use ground penetrating radar, believe it or not. Ground Penetrating Radar Systems is the name. So we use ground penetrating radar to identify items either in concrete or underground that construction companies primarily would want to avoid when they cut or drill into concrete or dig underground. Things like reinforcing steel or electrical conduits inside of a concrete slab, and utilities or underground storage tanks that may have been left in place.
Is it just concrete, or is it loose soil or compact soil and stuff also?
No, we can go through really any solid material, whether it's concrete or sand or rock, clay, anything underground. The only inhibitor is water. So if the ground's really wet, we can't see as effectively as we can in dry.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that on radar.
Yeah.
Well, you've been in business about, 10, 12 years now?
It'll be 12 years September 17th.
September. Oh, so we're coming up on the 12th anniversary. And you were recently named in Inc. magazine's 500 issue as one of the top 5,000 companies in America, correct?
We were. It was quite an honor. A little overwhelming. We came in at number 1523 on the top 5,000 list.
So you're in the top third of the new business or privately held businesses.
Yes.
And that's terrific. But the thing I wanted to get to, Matt, the thing I wanted our audience to hear was how you got started and some of the things you did to launch your company. I mean, you felt you had a good idea and a business model, and you had to get it out there. Now, the first story is that I want you to tell is the one in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Yeah, I was brand new in business, and my dad has a company in Toledo also, Ohio Concrete Sawing and Drilling, and that's really what led me into ground penetrating radar to help prevent some of the things that get cut when their company cuts in a concrete slab. So to practice, I would go to their job sites and follow one of their operators or a crew. Before they would cut, I would go ahead of them and try to identify things that might be in the path of that saw cut or wherever they were going to drill. And we did a job. They were doing a job at St. Joseph's Medical Center in Ypsilanti. And I went there a few hours ahead of time and marked out just a few things on the concrete, really trying to just figure out how this ground penetrating radar worked. So I marked out a few things, and the next day I got a call from one of the plant engineers with St. Joe's. And he said, "What is it that you were doing up here yesterday?" I said, "Well, I was using ground penetrating radar. It's a new business, and I was just trying to practice and get a handle on what was in the path of that saw cut." He said, "Well, you just saved us a ton of money. You marked out one of your marks was a 480 volt electrical conduit that was right in the path." So
you saved money, but you might have saved somebody's life too.
Potentially, yeah. But it was right in the path of the cut, and he said, "We'd like you to come back and give us a real presentation on how exactly this equipment works, and we think we'd like to use this before we do any cutting or drilling inside of our facilities." And that one little practice job turned into about 200 actual jobs for that facility over the next 5 years.
That to me is the whole story. You had a business, you're learning the business, and you gave your services away to practice initially and showed the value of that service. And then you got paid.
We did, yeah. 200 times over. It was one of those things where just right place, right time, right person, and it worked out well.
And you took action.
We did.
You can be at the right place in the right time, fall asleep, and it's the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of thing, So, but to me, that's the entrepreneurial story. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. You was willing to do something in order to learn your business and learn the value of it. And that, too many people don't understand that going into business.
They want to be paid full price, what they perceive as the value right out of the gates without being able to show value.
Well, at that time, I don't think that the experience I had with the radar was worth anything.
Yeah.
It worked out well for St. Joe's that one time, but I actually turned down the first request for a job because I knew I wasn't ready, and so a little embarrassing to look back at.
But
Awesome.
still, right place, right time, and you took action, showed the value. Fortunately, on the other side of the equation, the guy recognized the value.
He did.
And that's also, you don't always come across people that you provide service for that recognize the value of it.
No, yeah.
And you saved them thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars.
That was probably the biggest challenge initially, was creating the demand for this service. Nobody knew about it when we first got started, but
So nobody was really doing a radar.
there were a few companies around the United States that had the equipment, but there was nobody that was aggressively marketing it as a service that I knew of. I mean, there were just a few companies that had it. I think they used it more on their own work. But no, we really had to create the demand. We would stop by cold calls and have to introduce our potential customer base to what ground penetrating radar is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, when we come back, you got a second story I want to make sure you tell that also really helped launch your business. And it's a terrific story. And like I said, it has so many great points. So we're speaking with Matt Aston, president of Ground Penetrating Radar Systems, Inc. And I'm Gary Rathman. This is Doug Miller. This is Eye on Your Money. We'll be back in just a minute.
Now back to Eye on Your Money with Gary Rathbun.
We are back. We're spending some time talking to Matt Aston, president of Ground Penetrating Radar Systems, Inc., who's just named in the Inc. Magazine 500 issue, where you're in the top third of the private companies Inc. 5000. So that's a big deal, big honor, and it took a lot of work. It was not an overnight success, and you've been telling us some of your stories. Now, you got to tell the story on air about the Detroit airport story. This is a great story for me. So.
All right. On December 23rd, the business started September 17th, 2001. And the first 2 months, there was almost zero revenue, maybe two jobs. Most of my days were spent just going out, trying to build up that market and try to create the demand. And I had been doing sales in Detroit. This was December 23rd, 2001. And I was coming home. It was about 5:30 in the afternoon on down 275, and I saw a new tower crane that I hadn't seen at the Metro Airport. So I pulled off and said I wanted to just drive by and try to figure out what the job was. And I saw that it was a high potential for work.
This was the new terminal they were putting in there?
It was the Westin Hotel.
Oh, the Westin. Okay.
That's attached to the McNamara terminal
Okay.
at the airport.
Yep.
And so I saw that it was a concrete structure. I saw there was a high potential for me to do a lot of work there. So I said, well, after the first of the year, I'm really going to need to come back and visit this site. Well, on the way out of the airport, I happened to drive right next to where the construction trailers were. They called it Trailer City. And it just so happened the gate was open. There was no guard there. So I drove into the Trailer City, and At the construction manager's office, there was one car, and it was a BMW. I figured maybe this person is a decision maker, and maybe I'll get to talk to somebody. So I went into the trailer and introduced myself and gave him this really awful trifold brochure that we started with.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
And I started talking to him just a few minutes, and he put his hand up, and I was certain he was going to say, "Hey, it's like the day before Christmas Eve, 5:30. Get out of my office." But that's not what he said. He said, "Are you telling me that you could use this to find post-tension cables, which it's a method of reinforcing in concrete?" And I said, "Yes, sir. That's one of the applications that this is really good for." So he looked at me and said, "You might want to rent a condo in Romulus because we are in desperate need of this kind of service.
Wow.
And please come back after the first of the year. And here's my card. We need to set up a presentation on site." So I called him back after the first of the year, and one presentation turned into 6 or 7. But at the end of the day, we started work there in February of 2001, and we worked there 3 days a week until November. And
Oh, my goodness.
the neat thing about that story is I was back there, 3 days a week, like I said, and every other time that I went to that Trailer City area, there was a security guard at that gate, and you could not get in without a badge.
Yeah.
And so I happened to be driving by, at that time where.
But once again, to me, the point of the story is you took action. You could have easily went home 5:30 in the evening, afternoon, December, before Christmas
Right, yeah.
Eve. It would have been very easy to rationalize in your mind, screw it, I'm going home. I'm not going to make that call. But you made one more call.
The proverbial one more call.
Yeah.
And
That once again, that's the key. We hear those stories all the time. But if you're in business, you gotta make that one more call at 5:30, because that guy was working at 5:30 the day before Christmas Eve. You showed him you could work but 5:30 the day before Christmas Eve.
Well, we probably had, up to that point, about $2,000 in revenue in the history of the business.
Yeah,
And
This was a game changer.
that job got us profitable in the first year of business.
Yeah.
I mean, because they kept us busy, 3 days a week.
well, and you created value. They
We
wouldn't have
did.
kept you 9 months if you weren't creating value every day. I mean,
Yeah.
those guys are on tight budgets.
They
and,
drilled almost 2,000 holes in that building, and they had one problem core. So
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Now, before I get to some of the sensational questions, what problems have you had in your company the last 10, 12 years? I mean, what are the obstacles you've had to overcome? I mean,
It's obvious.
you prove your technology. What? I mean, nothing's easy.
Well, and you're a different company today, and it's easy for a person to say, "Oh, look at him, he's successful."
yeah, I would say one of the biggest problems was that first couple years, just not knowing where anything was coming from. I started this business from working in a Fortune 300 company, and I knew what my November was going to look like in July. When I started this company, I had no idea what my December was going to look like on December 15th.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to go the opposite. You didn't know what July was going to look like in November.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So just the first few years, questioning the viability of the business and is this really something that's sustainable, for the long term? And so much of that comes back to the people. And we've got an exceptional team of people. I mean, it doesn't matter if we sell ground penetrating radar services or if whatever other service we could provide. I would take this team and do any type of business with them. But we did have our fair share of problem hires along the way, guys that just weren't motivated, that were careless.
Kind of the paycheck junkie kind of thing. Wanted a paycheck.
Absolutely.
Didn't want to think on the job kind of
right.
thing.
And it's tough. I mean, the first time you fire somebody, it's awful, and it's still awful. I never want to be a good firer. I never want to enjoy that process. But
that's part of being an employer. You
Yeah.
know, Doug and I are employers. We've had to fire people, and I've always said, you know, the only thing worse than firing somebody is not firing somebody. Doug's got a better phrase. It's
People change, or the people change.
Yeah. And you know, I've reached the point in my life where I tell people I've never fired anybody. I have helped them choose their quit date. You know, but you know, we set out parameters. And how many employees do you have now?
we're just over 80.
80, and you're nationwide?
We've got services and we've got guys based in 42 different cities around the country.
Okay,
so our goal, our strategy has been to expand and establish a national footprint. And now we've got that, we've achieved that national presence. Now our goal is to expand vertically and gain some depth in those markets.
Okay. That's excellent. I mean, that's, you know, in 12 years, and your 12th anniversary is coming up. In 12 years, it sounds like a long time, but in business, that's not very long. You've went from nothing, not knowing the business and a new technology, to being on Inc.'s 5,000 list and being number 1,523 on that list. So
At the same time, kind of helping create your own industry.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's overwhelming, and when you look back, it doesn't seem possible when you have those days where you question that viability. But no, it's been a blast. I truly enjoy it. I'm totally privileged to be able to work with the people that I get to work with every day.
excellent. Well, we're talking to Matt Aston, president of Ground Penetrating Radar Systems. I got to ask, everybody's got to, what's the most interesting thing you've found?
I would say I'm not really sure. We've done a lot of. The reason I say I'm not sure is we were called to in the Dayton area, NCR. Back in the 40s, they developed this computer system that was used to crack the Enigma code. And
Oh, sure. Nazi Enigma code.
right, and so we found something on site. We scanned this large area. I wasn't on site. One of our technicians was. And we found this large reaction. We marked out the perimeter, defined the footprint for where it was, and we said, hey, I would start right here with the search. And they said, okay, it's time for you guys to go. And so we called back a couple weeks later to see what it was, and I forget exactly what they said it was, but it certainly was not the computer.
Something but not for your eyes, though.
Right, but we've over the years we've been called to look for Jimmy Hoffa.
Isn't he at the Red Sox Stadium?
Meadowlands.
The Meadowlands.
Yeah, that's the rumor.
And then
I mean, on that, do you have law enforcement reach out to you to?
we actually last year, Doug, we found 2 murder victims.
Yeah.
One was in Salt Lake City, and one was in Orlando. And law enforcement did call us, and we found 2.
Wow.
That's incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah.
So that radar will pick up an anomaly if there's a body buried there, or
Changes in the electrical conductivity properties of different
Okay.
materials.
I'd say we was talking off air. It's not as clean as we see on CSI, where you get a facial expression of the
that's-
body and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Hollywood has their own way of sensationalizing what the data actually looks like.
Well, we got to have ratings. You know, we're not
right.
concerned about anything else.
Yeah.
We got to have ratings. Now, you have actually done some consulting for like CSI or TV shows.
We've been on probably a half dozen TV shows. CSI New York, Rizzoli Isles, Ghost Hunters, Decoded, a couple shows on the History Channel. So
Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
So I didn't realize what a celebrity we had.
Yeah, really.
Wow.
You know, finally, I'm meeting people that have equal notoriety to. was for Doug's benefit and nobody else's, so I apologize for that. Well, Matt, it's been great having you here. President of Ground Penetrating Radar Systems, Inc., nationwide company, Inc. Magazine's 500 top 5,000 private companies. Just a terrific success story. I'm glad you was able to take some time away from family this time of day. I know it's necessarily tough, but great story. I wanted to get it out there to our people, and appreciate your time. And hopefully we'll have you back sometime and talk about business again if you can.
I'd be glad to do it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, once again, it's our pleasure. Thanks so much. Matt Aston, President, Ground Penetrating Radar Systems, Inc., main company here, main office here in Toledo, but really nationwide. I'm Gary Rathbun with Doug Miller. This is Eye on Your Money. We'll be back in just a minute.